Why would someone travel for a day to buy Parmigiano Reggiano from Enoteca Sileno? It's about the cheese, definitely, but it's ultimately about trust. On the occasion of the Melbourne institution's 70th birthday, we spend a special double episode with Rosemary and John Portelli, the custodians of an import, wholesale and retail business founded by Rosemary's father, Gino Di Santo, in 1953.
It's all about the little artisan producers, farmers. Some are bigger, some are smaller, and that's what we like to bring to Australia and show to Australians.
People trust us, they believe in us, they know that they're going to get a great product, and that is so reassuring.
From the beginning, whether it was wine or espresso machines, balsamic vinegar or jarred artichokes, pasta or beautiful rice, Enoteca Sileno honours the artisans who make the products by carefully selecting, transporting and sharing tales of each item with their Australian customers. In this first episode, we hear from Rosemary about the origins of Enoteca Sileno, which started as an importer and wholesaler, moved to its first shop in Amess Street, Carlton North in 1982, and shifted to its current old pub emporium nearby in 2004. The soul of Enoteca Sileno has remained the same, a celebration of artisan food and drink, a tender and enthusiastic honouring of the farmers and makers, and a belief in legacy and family. This is Enoteca Sileno. Everything is here for a reason, and everything has a story.
I'm Rosemary Portelli, and we're at Enoteca Sileno in North Carlton. For 70 years we've been importing and distributing beautiful Italian food and wine. We always look for the authentic and regional products so that it's not a whole lot of Chardonnays or grape varieties from other regions, from other countries, but try and get really Italian native varieties. And so we've got the wines, beautiful spirits, especially some Sardinian ones, which are spirits and liqueurs. They're amazing. And traditional, the craft beers from Balladen, and soft drink, which they're all natural, really lovely drinks. And foods, all authentic, traditional, regional foods from all parts of Italy that are made well, that are made with good criteria. That's not about, the money at the end. It's all about the little artisan producers, farmers. Some are bigger, some are smaller, who make really good regional products that have been made in their area, maybe by their family for even hundreds of years. And that's what we like to bring to Australia and show to Australians and get them to understand and love these beautiful products, which are really good to eat.
Rosemary's father Gino was a classic Italian post-war immigrant who came to Australia for a better life and, crucially, a path that was his own to forge. With his Australian wife Maxine as crucial support, he started bringing in Italian products for immigrants just like him.
Dad, Gino, his name was Luigi but always known as Gino, came to Australia in 1952 and did, the cane cutting, the timber cutting. He was at Bongilla, did that sort of thing for maybe a year. He wasn't. He didn't have assisted passage. He chose to come here with two friends, basically because he and his grandfather, who was also Luigi, were both very strong personalities, and his grandfather brought electricity to the whole area where he lived, where he was born, and basically expected that his grandson would follow on. And if you knew Dad, he wasn't very good with electricity or anything like that. He said, no, I can do it on my own. He did study a couple of years of medicine sort of before the war, and he had a few companies over in Italy, in Milano. But then he said, no, I can do it. And he came to Australia, the furthest place I think that they could think of. And one of the first things that he would do in Melbourne is he would, when the ships from Italy, the cruise ships or the immigrants ships from Italy landed in Melbourne, he would go to have, the Italian ships, to have a good coffee, a good espresso. And then he thought, well, you know, maybe he can bring in some of these products. And he started that way in a very small way. He met Mum because one of the other two guys that he came to Australia with said, look, when you go to Melbourne, go to this particular boarding house because there's really nice, you know, woman there. And, you know, they met, fell in love and so forth. And they worked together to just try and bring good food, that what they needed at the time. And it started off with, coffee machine, electric sewing machine, because the women, all migrant women, would sew clothes for the families, and things like even, which sounds revolting, clams in jars, and it's sort of, you know, the more he could get, the more he would bring over. But he would go to Italy by ship, so it would take about 4 weeks to get there, 4 weeks to get back. So sometimes he would be away 6-8 months of the year, and Mum was here eventually with 3 little children and trying to run the business here. So she was a pretty amazing woman behind the scenes, behind, you know, the face of Gino. She was great. She was Australian, learnt Italian eventually because she would hear Dad and his mates, when they were playing cards, they'd say basta, which means that's enough, you know, I've lost, you've won, whatever. And she'd think, what are they saying? You know, I thought they were swearing. So, and also to talk to her husband. So she learnt Italian, and she was really very good and a great cook.
A feature of Rosemary's childhood was Gino's absence on long buying trips to Italy, and the excitement of his return with new products to introduce to the Australian market.
I remember Dad would, when he would come back around Easter or after Easter by ship, he would bring the most beautiful dark chocolate Easter eggs. And in Italy they have gifts, so you can order an Easter egg with a little gift inside, and it can be a special gift that you get, you know, for whoever you're giving the egg to. The smell of chocolate for weeks after he returned was amazing in the house. And also things like, so there was citrato, which is, it's like an effervescent drink. You add it to water, and we would pack it, as we did also the chamomile tea. So that was, I'd earn my pocket money during the holidays weighing and packing that, and he would sell, obviously, that to all the little delis around Melbourne. And just, I don't know, all the good food that we would have. And Dad would always bring something back to taste, or have something, you know, that would arrive by mail that we would taste, samples to taste. And it was always exciting. And then, you know, there were different wines that we were allowed to, when we were little, as long as we were having dinner, have, you know, a sip to taste. So there's always something exciting. Maybe not everything was really tasty to my liking, but it was also always good fun doing all that. And when I was, I think the first time when I was 4, and then when I was about 5.5 or 6, the first time Dad took me back to Italy on his own, you know, to meet the grandparents, and I understood why he had that funny accent, as you know, and why we were different to, you know, the Aussies around the corner and that sort of thing. And it was, I think that was fantastic to have had those experiences. It was really good.
Maxine may not have been Italian, but she could turn her hand to beautiful handmade pasta. What was dinner time like for Rosemary when she was a child?
If it was a birthday, Mum would always say, "What would you like for dinner?" And I would always say, have pasta, cotolette, which is a schnitzel, and a nice salad and chocolate mousse. She would make the best chocolate mousse. But anything, she would also make her own pasta. I remember she would have lasagna, really paper-thin lasagna sheets that she would make, and it'd be drying all over the house. And then she would make the most amazing, it was a vegetarian lasagna, but it was just all fresh spring vegetables. It was just beautiful. No tomato sauce, but it was just amazing. I've tried and have failed to make it. So she was, she was amazing. She learnt a lot just by experimenting, playing around with the food. And then when we went to Italy as a family when I was about 6, she obviously learnt a lot from Dad's mum and sister, and just eating. Yeah, she loved cooking. Yeah. Dad, I think, was a bit difficult. He had a lot on his plate. He was trying to, because they were both on their own. They had no family here. They were trying to, make a home for their kids and build up this business. And they had friends, but no family. So I think that was hard for them. But then as we grew up and as the business grew and they felt more settled, I guess, and more, settled, they, I suppose, were calmer. But Dad was always known as a very tough person, but, he was really lovely. And Mum was amazing.
Given her parents had a business that consumed them, it's no surprise to hear that Rosemary was embedded in Enoteca Sileno from an early age. What did she do for pocket money? And how did her adult involvement in the business come about?
Always at school holidays, I would go to Amess Street when we had the store in Amess Street and, pack the citrato, the chamomile tea. I would help writing the invoices back in the day when they were all done by hand. Had a reckoner. Do you know what they were? A reckoner where it's a little book and it says if something is whatever it was, £10, whatever, and there was a 12% or 12.5% discount, it should be this. Like that would help you work all that out, and a calculator and everything. I would help stack the shelves. It wasn't so much we did sell retail, but it was more like a warehouse place there. And then when I was about 30, Dad was getting a bit tired, and he said, I might just close or sell the business. Do you want to take it over? Silly me said, yeah, I'll give it a try. I was a primary teacher at that point. But it was, so I sort of left teaching and just went full-time into this, and it was a huge learning curve, even though I had been working a lot. And, obviously at home we would, and even with our kids, when they were at home, we'd always talk about what was happening. So it was around me all the time. But when you're sort of stepping up to really take control and run the whole business, there's a lot to learn. And then eventually I met John and we married, and Dad said, well, rather than have our forces split, if John wanted to come into the business. And he did, and there we go. That was it.
It was Rosemary who made the decision to embrace the legacy of Enoteca Sileno and devote herself to the family business. But it became much easier a few years later when her husband, John Portelli, joined, amplifying and expanding Rosemary's own suite of skills and energy. he picks up the tale.
I'm John Portelli. So my history with the business starts with Enoteca Sileno starts in 1987 officially. That's when I moved into the business. Prior to that, I had been working at a cheese shop in Carlton, the Lagan food store, and I was behind the counter there for over 15 years full-time and several years after that part-time. So in 87, a few years after Rosemary and I had, a year after effectively we got married, my father-in-law said, look, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. I'd had an enormous amount of experience in the retail sector. He said, I just want to know what my plans would be for the future if you would think you'd want to come into the business. And so effectively it took off from there. So I had, I think, a fortunate, an incredible amount of retail experience of 70 hours behind a counter, 6 days a week in all. And I brought that into the business, and I knew not one iota about importing and wholesaling, apart from the fact I'm buying from other wholesalers, and learnt an incredible amount from a man who had amazing talents and abilities as an importer, being self-taught and but very entrepreneurial. Extraordinarily entrepreneurial. He was, in some instances, decades ahead of his time, and I was able to learn a lot of that in our travels throughout Italy. We'd be driving thousands of kilometres, and when you're in a car for thousands of kilometres, there are a lot of conversations that you have, and as you're going through regions, and this inspires something else, and something leads onto something else. So I came in from that aspect, and I had a pretty steep learning curve.
John Portelli was scooped up by the world of food at an early age, and he never broke away. He tells the story of his teen years selling cheese and the sad circumstances that led to him committing himself full-time.
Call it destiny, call it tragedy. In a sense. So I was working in the cheese shop in Carlton on a part-time basis, school holidays, Saturday mornings, and it was and whenever I was called, I was still at school. I was still doing my matric. Unfortunately, my mum was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and I was still a teenager, and she'd actually had it for quite a long while, but in the early 1970s, they didn't know much about brain tumours. So she had operation, but she passed away a little while afterwards. And when you're pretty young and you're doing matric, you're doing Form 6, it was a pretty hard slog. And so I thought I just couldn't finish the year. And so I knocked on the door in the cheese shop and I said, do you have a full-time job? And they really didn't, but they just probably took me on, It was a help, but then they knew that I could really work really hard. And I did, sometimes I'd be there really early in the mornings, and I'd take 8 tons of pasta Barilla upstairs in the days when Barilla was just launched. I'd cure 5 ton of Parmigiano cheese. It's 150, 160 wheels of oiling, rotating wheels of cheese that were in those, they were about the 35 kilos. That's 75 pounds in the Imperial or more. So I did over 15 years of an apprenticeship, still waiting for my certificate of accomplishment. And look, it's interesting that I had a home-cooked meal every day of my school life. So I lived effectively over the fence from the Coburg High School, and there was a lane separating, and on my way through the back gate, I'd go past the chicken coop, and there were fruit and vegetables. Dad grew everything, and we had a wood-fired stove, and we cooked on the wood-fired stove for 8 months of the year. I'd chop wood. I'd go into the back lanes and the old houses they were demolishing. I'd bring these long 18 feet planks and bearers and joisters on my shoulders full of nails and cut them up, saw them up, chop them up, and we had it for heat, we had it for cooking, we had it for baking, we did everything on the wood-fired stove. And so having a home-cooked meal, I'd have, when a lot of my school friends had Vegemite sandwiches, I was having minestrone, I was having spezzatino, I would be eating hot, warm eggs and poaching them on a pan on top of the wood-fired stove in olive oil with stale bread that I'd hold over the fire, over the flame and toast it. So that's the sort, I was really fortunate that I was exposed to food, and we were self-subsistent, so we made an incredible amount of produce at home. The pickling of olives, the curing of sardines and anchovies. You made our passata. Dad made the best homemade wine vinegar that any homemade person would make, because they didn't have the technology. And when you're getting grapes coming over from South Australia and it takes a week before you're crushing them, obviously it's going to oxidize. But it was great, and so having exposure to that, and I then was fortunate. I was exposed to an incredible amount of people. The cheese shop, highly cultural. I'm talking about all the doctors from all the hospitals around Carlton, the university professors and teachers, the poor students who would come in barefoot in the 70s when they couldn't afford, and old singlets, and they were just renting in a room in Carlton, which was really dirt cheap. And now you've got to go, 10 kilometres away from Carlton to get a dirt cheap room. So and all the migrants who worked in the hospitals as well, and the surrounding businesses and factories around Collingwood, and they would go on their way home and they would buy cut meats and cheeses and so forth. And so you're giving them the lunches for the family for the next day. But what I think was quite extraordinary is that I was exposed to not Italy. I was exposed to regional Italy. I understand 98% of the dialects. I can speak a lot of those dialects. If I'm in a region, I can speak words from those dialects very, very comfortably, because from a young person I was exposed to them. And so when I'm talking to a Venetian lady, I know the Venetian lady's habits, cultures, flavours, tastes, products that she likes, the way that she presents herself, her conversation, her cuisine, which is going to be completely different to a Sicilian and or a Calabrese cuisine as a regional identity. So having that exposure meant that for me, it sort of gave me a pathway of being able to infiltrate certain foods and understanding their origins, their seasons, their uses, the people. Why was such a product devised, developed, happened? And was it because people who were near the coast had always been exposed to invasions, and then they probably had to move further inland to be able to live? But moving inland, and when you're coming from the coast and you've had a fish diet, you then have to consider, how do I keep my fish? And so the salting of the fish happened that lasted for 6 months, or the drying of the codfish. And so you're sort of exposed to that. But I've had an amazingly rich upbringing and development in my lifetime in these exposures.
The Enoteca Sileno philosophy has always been to seek out the best products of the highest integrity. But how does the hunt work in practice?
What I would normally do is, now we're talking way before Google Maps, and so I would have 3 large maps. They're about 500-600 millimetres high and about 400 millimetres, and there were about 3 or 4, one for central Italy, one for the islands, one for northern Italy, and I'd have to determine which ones I'd take with me to. And so you're on the bonnet of your car, and you've got to decide, okay, I've got to go here, and so you have a landline, and from the hotel you phone your supplier. They know you're coming because you've sent them a fax or even a telex. So you sent them a fax saying, I'm going to be on my way and I'm going to be there on this date. And you say to them, so I want to know, once I hit the autostrada, which direction? And they'll tell me the direction. I says, what's the uscita? What's the casella? Which is the exit? And at the exit, you've got the toll. And so I said, at the exit, then the highways, the freeways are the green. Then you go into the blue, which are the strade statali signs. So I hit the blue signs and I say, what's the direction? And they go, you go down such and such to here. You go down about 5 kilometres. Okay, at 5, so I'm writing arrow, 5 kilometres, right. I said, and from there, then you find this road. Okay. So they said, look, we'll come and pick you up at the Casella. It's about a 20-minute drive. I said, no. I said, I want to make my own way as close as I can because I want to understand the terrain and that sort of thing. And very often, most often, I would actually find them and they would never have to leave. But sometimes I said, no, we better pick you up. But the funny thing would be, and I'll get to the stories about some of those experiences. I'm getting to those, but some of them would say, it's a 3 kilometre drive off the freeway, and then at 3 kilometres you turn to the right. And I said, and so it's signed? And he goes, yeah. Okay, so if at 3 kilometres, because in Australia, 3 kilometres is 3,000 metres, not 3,001. If at 3,000 metres I don't see the road, do I turn back? He goes, no. And I said, so how far is it? He goes, it could be 5 or 6. I go, that's the Italian way. So you have to understand this psyche. And so it's all of this, this wonderful, these exchanges and because, as I said, I set the foundations by saying that I'm fortunate that I was exposed to so many Italians, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Italians during my, call it apprenticeship, which means that gave me the grounding and the footwork of being able to understand how to approach them. So if we would go to, for instance, we might have gone and visited Martelli at the time, and Martelli is a family near Pisa in a village called Lari, which is a village, and it's a castle. So the Pisani from Pisa used to always fight the Florentines from Florence, who always used to fight the Sienese, and they had the strategic hills. And Lari is on this from the Pisa, and it's incredible views that you have of this little castle all of a sudden. And there's 2 families, 2 brothers and their whole families, 10 of them lived in one dwelling. So they had one room, they whacked a wall in between, created 2 bathrooms. And they've been producing pasta since 1926. So here we are, we come into this one-way castle road. And as we come in round, Mr. Martelli knows we're coming at about 10. He's with his yellow apron, one of the brothers, and he waves, and we go around and come around the corner. And he's got these pallets next to the wall of the castle, with the wall of the castle about 20 metres high. And the pallet is there so nobody else would park the car there because, we come from Australia. So we had to have the only car spot in front of there. And so we're going in, and you're expecting, and I visited other pasta plants before. And here we are. And walk in, and I can see the family, the various generations, and they've got the yellow dust coats on, and one person's weighing, one person's got a stapler, one person's putting it into a box, another person put the crosses on the boxes for the shape that are in their individual square and moves them onto a pallet. And so it's entirely hands-on. And they have a little radio playing in the background and having these conversations. The odd local villager passes by and says, "Buongiorno Dino." And so you're getting this incredible, wonderful feeling of family. But the Martelli family have a table. And it's almost like an extendable monk's table, a frattino with a monk's technique, you're pretty close. And depending on how many people passed by and stopped by would depend on how long they extended this table. And you ate in their large kitchen where everything is cooked there, and they stop. And they stop at about the 1 o'clock, the 1:30 every day. The whole family congregate. Some of the other children or grandchildren, or whatever, they all come in and sit in this long table. And you have, and they'll invite other people. And so there's always a pasta as a first. And then there could be rabbit and cornelio. But it's inevitable that while you're there, you're going to be talking about the pasta, and they'll say, we just did a small batch of 20 kilos, and we just and this one here, we only age this for 1 day or the 2 day, when there's normally a dried pasta. We just wanted to see how it's going to be as a fresh pasta, or how the holding, the cooking time. So it's almost, they're always experimenting, and they've got you there in this amazing conversation. So you're eating with the family. There are various stories like this that give you a very, very close connection to incredible people, human beings, suppliers, generational, artisans.
Rosemary and John own Enoteca Sileno, but the heart of the store is a collaboration with loyal customers. How do these relationships work, and why are they so enduring?
Customers, all our customers are good because they want the best. They want an experience. They want something special.
We'll have clients will phone in and they'll say to me, can you prepare 3 dozen, 4 dozen, 5 dozen bottles of wine? I want them 5, 10, 15, 20 years old. I want them to drink now. I don't want to buy green bananas at the fruit shop because I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. I want to know I can go down, I can open up a bottle, bring it out. I know that it's going to be at its best as it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We bring in refrigerated container. We store in a climate-controlled warehouse. Because we've got so much insulation thermally, we don't need to have air conditioners running all the time, and the wines don't get natural light, and they're at their best. But I will only ship refrigerated. 9 out of 10 of every container that we do, whether it's food, wine, salt, even pasta, vinegar, I do refrigerated. At certain times of the year I don't have to, but between otherwise, canned tomatoes and salt and vinegar don't always have to be. But I will not compromise on product crossing the equator in a normal tin box at 60, 70 degrees. You go into a tin shed at home where your tools are, and you stand in there in a hot summer's day for 1 hour. Imagine when it's in the middle of the equator for 2 and 3 weeks. It's going to destroy the organoleptic qualities of everything, and people have no respect. So people trust us, they believe in us, they know that they're going to get a great product, and that is so reassuring. We have extraordinary relationships with our clients. They're absolutely fantastic. They're people who understand and appreciate and know the difference. I often have had young children coming in that might have been running around, and you might be concerned because there's glass bottles, and I would say to the young ones, to the parents, look, can I give them a packet of pasta? They were so well behaved. I'll get down to the young ones' level. I'll say, you've been such a good person and you deserve to have this pasta because there are a lot of bottles and they could break and fall, but I want you to have this pasta. And it's a very special pasta. It takes a long time to make. I try and be brief, and I tell them that the time that it takes, and it's good in high in proteins, and you don't notice, and you can eat a good plate full. Anyway, the young ones take it home and they tell their mum and dad where they can cook the pasta. Or the young ones have been over to a friend's place, and the mother says, "Oh, can little Johnny stay over?" And the little kid got to do a plate of pasta. And the little kid goes, "What brand are you going to cook?" That sort of thing. So our customers, irrespective of if they've had the opportunity of travelling or not, the greatest satisfaction that I have is that when someone has tried one of our artisan pastas, or our risotto rice, or they've tried the extra virgin olive oil, or the Tajasca olives. I still cure Parmigiano today, and we are selling today Parmigiano Reggiano 5 years and 5 months old to eat. Our grana is 44 month old, which is generally more to cook. We cure it with olive oil at the warehouse we rotated. Our clients will travel 30, 40, 50, 60 kilometres for our Parmigiano and say to us, why can't I find Parmigiano like yours anywhere else? Because I don't leave it in cardboard boxes. The cardboard boxes that ferment, that it could be stacked one on top of another in a cool room. Ours is alive, they're breathing. We oil. I select the producer. I select the time of the year. I select the sizes of the Parmigiano. I select the gigantina, the quality of the Parmigiano being the tester. And if it goes to all those parameters, that's what I would take. And our customers don't ask us how much. They ask us how good, because I have told them I do not go to visit our suppliers, prospective or old, and ask them how much, or say to them you can't increase the price. No, I don't say what's the best price you can give me for a pasta. No, I say how much do you have to be paid for your pasta? And because we respect the producer, we respect the product, we respect the consumer, I've always greatly believed, and I've been doing this full-time for over 50 years full-time, and it's not being the 38 hours a week. It's when you're involved in business, and it's longer hours. And when customers come to you and they say, I realise a difference. And when the restaurateurs realise there's a better yield. And I say to the restaurateurs, do not underestimate your customer. If I tell you that more than 1 million portions of rusticella pasta are cooked in Australia every year, more than 1 million portions, the question you as a chef have to ask yourself, can I risk to serve something that's going to be compromised to this person if this person can eat a better pasta at home? Can I risk? And this is what you have to ask, because if customers are coming and they've got to pay the babysitter and the Uber, and you might to leave them a tip, and they can't go out all that often because the mortgages are high, or they have to be very, very selective. You really have to give people an experience. And I think one of the great things is that we have people coming to us because they want a true genuine, gastronomic, humble as it might be, experience, because they can tell the difference. And they will come here and they will say, look, I've gone and I've bought all these balsamic vinegars, or I've been given it they come from X chain, whatever. And if I've got to say the word, it's crap. It killed my wine. I bought $40 a bottle of wine. It ruined my palate for the whole meal. It destroyed my dish. And we have these incredible satisfactions, these incredible, good feels that you need. And our clients, I have to say, our clients are our fuel. They give us energy. They give us the voglia, the want. They give us the desire to find something else which is not easy to find. When we go and look for suppliers, new suppliers, someone might say, look, have you ever thought on such and such a product? The first people I will ask suppliers, who do you recommend? But I say, remember, you've got to recommend someone who is worthy, because if they're not any good, then you're going to be, on the wrong side of the fence.
This is the first episode in a special 2-part podcast that celebrates the legacy and enduring importance of Melbourne's Enoteca Sileno on the occasion of its 70th anniversary. Look out for the second episode, which continues the tale of this rigorously curated representation of Italy in Australia. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Danny Vallant. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta @Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.